Now to our correspondent who's in the studio with us, Murad Gazdiev. Now, Murad, we heard the attacker shout about Aleppo. Now, you've been following Syria, the developments in Syria for a long time now. How can these two things be linked, do you think?
Well, he was shouting Allahu Akbar, God is great, as he shot the Russian ambassador. That already tells us he's got religious, beliefs, and those religious beliefs are shared by many of the rebels in Syria. Perhaps he has a special relationship with them. Perhaps he's a member of some sort of organization, which would be strange because he was, according to what we know, born in Turkey. He grew up in Turkey, attended a police academy, graduated in 2014, and here he is shooting the Russian ambassador. He apparently got into the gallery by showing a police ID. He had a police ID. It's unclear whether he was still active duty because, according to latest reports, he was fired in 2015 for playing a role in the coup attempt against President Erdogan in Turkey. Nevertheless, here we can talk about why he did this. There's so many reasons, potential reasons. He could have tried to assassinate the Russian ambassador. The Russian ambassador was instrumental, central in repairing ties between Russia and Turkey in the aftermath of Turkey shooting down a Russian bomber jet in 2015. He was instrumental. He played a central role. He also played a central role in securing the evacuation of people from Aleppo. The evacuation deal whereby rebels and their supporters get to safely leave Aleppo. And, you know, here we have a situation where the rebels, many of them have been unhappy about this evacuation deal. They attacked the buses yesterday. 5 buses attacked, burned by rebels who obviously don't want any sort of deal, any sort of negotiation happening. Tomorrow, the Russian, the Iranian, and the Turkish heads of foreign offices are supposed to meet to discuss, major talks to discuss the future of Syria, coming together, working together. Perhaps he was trying to derail, ruin that. Nevertheless, the media has been highly critical of Russia's role, the Syrian role in Aleppo. They've been whitewashing the rebels. Whatever the rebels do get much less coverage than even rumors, and I mean rumors, Twitter posts, Facebook posts, without any sort of verification of crimes in Aleppo that could have been committed by Russia or by the Syrian government. The media has been hysterical, and, perhaps it has pushed some people to more radical actions.
Murad, just while we've got you here, you spend time in Syria. Will something like this, whether or not it's done in the name or by, and I don't know if there is official members of Islamic State, but certainly as sympathizers, Islamic State tend to take responsibility for these attacks, whether it's actually done directly or in some way linked, or in their name at least. Is this going to try and embolden the grouping in the country? Is this going to be seen as a major coup for them? Because, as you were mentioning, there's been a major pushback of Islamic State by Syrian government forces, backed by the Russian Air Force in the nation. The stronghold of Aleppo has been taken away. They were on their, I don't know if the dying breath or dying feet, but they certainly were in those areas. Is this something that they're going to jump on now and say, look at what we can do?
Well, I would draw the distinction here between ISIS, the Islamic State, and rebels. Al-Qaeda, Nusra Front, Ahrar al-Sham, Jaish al-Islam, all the rebel groups, and ISIS on the other hand. There was some fighting against ISIS in Aleppo province, the Queiroz air base, but here, ISIS doesn't have much of a stake in Aleppo city. We filmed a few of their flags, but there could have been just a dozen of them there. ISIS doesn't care too much about what happens in Aleppo. It doesn't have any strong presence there. Who does care are the rebels, the hardline rebels, especially the ones that lost out. Al-Qaeda, Nusra in Syria. They were the biggest losers. This guy was shouting about God being great and shouting about Aleppo. We're speculating here, but if I had to draw any parallels, if I had to say, who he supported, I would say he supported the rebels rather than Islamic State. Obviously, this is all speculation. We have no proof, no verification. I'm not going to say anybody knows, aside from him and perhaps his conspirators, why he did this, what his motivation was. But with regards to Aleppo, you know, Aleppo was the biggest urban area held by the rebels. It was probably the most important urban area held by the rebels. For them to lose it was a devastating blow. And such a devastating blow could have, you know, could have bred this sort of desperation that we saw in Ankara today.
Like a dying blow of sorts. Okay, Maria Zakharova, bring this up to date with, well, what we don't actually know, but what we are speculating on why this attack happened. If you're just joining us, welcome to RT International. Our only story this hour, the assassination of the Russian ambassador to Turkey in the Turkish capital, Ankara, some hours ago. He was shot dead while opening a photo exhibition at an art gallery in the very centre of the city. These are pictures of the aftermath of it, authorities trying to get in the place, trying to figure out what happened and trying to get the attacker. The attacker, we believe, was shot dead. The words used by the Turkish police neutralised by officials there. We believe that he fled the scene. He shot the ambassador within the gallery. He then fled the scene and was shot dead. There's a state of lockdown now in that particular area in the Turkish capital, Ankara. A lot of reaction has been coming into this, of course. Let's take a listen to the statement of the Foreign Ministry spokesperson, Maria Zakharova. She spoke a little bit earlier regarding the killing of the Russian ambassador.
It's a tragic day in the history of Russian diplomacy. Today, during a public event in Ankara, the Russian ambassador Andrey Karlov was wounded, and he later died of his wounds. We regard the attack as a terrorist act. Russia is staying in contact with Turkish officials who say they will investigate the incident. Those responsible for the death will be punished. Today, the incident will be raised at the UN Security Council. Terrorism will be stopped. We will fight against terrorism.
Okay, just some more on the person who was killed this evening. Andrey Karlov was a career diplomat. He had been serving as Russian ambassador to Turkey since 2013. He joined the diplomatic service back in 1976. He was 62. Let's cross live now to Jim Jatras, who's a former U.S. diplomat himself. He's talking to us from Washington, D.C. Jim, tragic circumstances to be talking to this hour. It has been confirmed that the ambassador to Russia was assassinated. Just something else coming into us now. There are reports that the White House says that they are now united in fighting terrorism together with Russia. It does beg the question, did it take the killing of a top diplomat for them to see that this was the way forward to fight against terrorism together in the region?
If that is sincerely the path they choose to take now, I would say better late than never. They have been resisting that. I'm not convinced that even this will do it. I do notice the State Department spokesman actually used the word condemn, which is rather unusual in these cases. Let's remember that the security of diplomatic personnel the responsibility for that belongs to the host government, in this case Turkey. And I think the real question right now will be, did Turkey do everything they could have and should have done in order to protect Ambassador Karlov? Did they slip up in some way? And we always have to worry about the prospect that there may have been some inside collusion inside the Turkish establishment. We've had the purge of personnel by Erdogan after the failed coup. Let's also remember that for a long time, Turkey has supported terrorist forces from the Northern Caucasus working against Russia. There are a lot of those people inside Turkey. Whether anybody had any kind of relationship to any of these kind of jihad terrorist groups, whether connected to the Caucasus, whether connected to Syria or not, from the gunman's words, we have an indication that was part of his motivation in any case. So there are a lot of unanswered questions here, and I hope Turkey can reassure Moscow, truthfully, that they did everything possible and that this is somebody who somehow slipped through despite their best efforts.
Well, what is your take on that? Because let's put it into context what we know here. This was the opening of a photo exhibition in Ankara, some sort of cultural event, fair play, okay. but it's happening between two nations who have not had the best of relations. They have been strained in recent years. You would assume that in the capital city of Turkey, when the leading Russian diplomat in the country is there, that somebody, and these are just reports, Jim, that we're hearing, that somebody, a former police officer who was fired after taking part in the coup against Erdogan recently, he was able to enter the building with a gun, acting as a police detective of some sort. We're seeing him in a suit, so he wasn't in proper police costume, as it were. It leads to a lot of questions how that this could happen in such a situation when ties between the two nations are tense.
Exactly right. Now, that could be a question that, well, he had a credential, he looks good, they let him through, and their security was more lax than it should have been. Or it may be that, suppose the security was much tighter than that, and that somebody let him through, and there was some kind of inside cooperation with him. That, you know, that's pure speculation, but those are certainly among the questions you want to ask. One of the other things that occurs to me is, I understand besides shouting Allahu Akbar, he spoke some words in Turkish, but also I understand from reports said something in Russian, and I haven't heard what he might have said in Russian, whether he spoke with an accent, a Turkish accent, some other kind of accent. So again, I think there are many connections, whether we're talking about to Daesh, whether we're talking about to Al-Qaeda, connected to the Aleppo situation, or maybe something more specifically directed toward Russia, either in the North Caucasus, or, as has been mentioned earlier in the program, the meeting that's due to take place tomorrow among the foreign ministers of Turkey, Russia, and Iran on the Syria crisis to try to bust up this kind of on and off rapprochement between Moscow and Ankara.
Just another aspect that we're hearing on this. Let me just read out a statement, Jim, and we'll get your take on it just right after it. The U.S. State Department has issued a warning on Twitter regarding reports of a shooting near the American embassy in Ankara. It has advised U.S. citizens to avoid the embassy area until further notice. According to reports, the embassy compound has been placed on lockdown. Now, the incident comes around, what, two and a half hours after the Russian ambassador to Turkey was assassinated at that art gallery. It's around 4 kilometers away. So you've got a situation now, Jim, that Washington is talking about a situation of a shooting. The gunman who killed the Russian ambassador was, in the words of the Turkish police, neutralized, so it was not him. What would be your take here? Is this something that happens immediately afterwards, that they're just being overly secure, or is it a developing situation?
Well, it's a very sketchy report. We don't even know that anything happened, but suppose there was the sound of gunfire or something indicating an incident near the American embassy happening so soon in time, connected to the assassination of the Russian ambassador, just as we often see with a bombing attack, for example, more than one bomb set off within within a limited distance from one another within a time window. It's possible that whoever was behind this, if this was not a lone gunman, as they say, but was part of a coordinated effort, there might have been some other action that they contemplated not too far away and not too separated in time in order to send some kind of a message. So it's possible that if this is an organized campaign by some group with an agenda, that there might be another attack pending